I need to make a few caveats. The first one being that this is purely my own personal subjective opinion, and I don't expect other people to necessarily agree with me. Secondly, it's not about image quality. The image quality with all of the EFM lenses is fine if you're uploading to the internet or making prints. I've made 12 by 18 inch prints with all these lenses and the image quality is fine. I think you're only going to run into problems with image quality if you are a really obsessive pixel peeper. And thirdly, I tend just to take still photos with my EOS M system. For video, I use a DJI Action 5, and that also makes a difference. So I got a comment recently about EOS M saying that like video bloggers tend to prefer wider angle lens. So for example, they would prefer the 11-22 lens to the 18-55. There are only 8 native EFM lenses, and in traditional fashion, I'll do this list in reverse order. So starting with number 8, and that's the EFM 15-45. This is a lens that I never planned to get, but when I've done body upgrades in the past, I couldn't just buy a body alone. It came with lenses, and I ended up with 2 of these lenses, but I've hardly ever used them. And the reason is not because it's a bad lens, it's actually a good little lens. And if you've got an EOS M camera and one lens, it's probably going to be this one. It's been the kit lens for a long time. It's just that by the time I got this lens, I already had the 18-55 and the 11-22. And just for sort of general walk around purposes, I found those 2 lenses more useful than the 15-45. So that's the only reason I haven't really used this lens. Number 7 on the list is the EFM 28mm macro. And once again, it's not a long way down the list because it's a bad lens. It's actually a very good lens. One of the attributes of a macro lens is that it has to be very sharp. And this one is very sharp. And it's got the little LED lights at the end, which can be quite useful. I also have the EF 100mm macro. And in many ways, the little EFM lens is more practical. It's got more magnification, 1.2 times versus 1 times. So it's got those little LED lights. And when I'm shooting macro, I tend to use focus bracketing because of the very narrow depth of field. And when you do focus bracketing, you take multiple frames and the camera has to be in the same position. And when I use the EF 100mm, I need to use a tripod to do that. With the EFM 28mm, I can actually do focus bracketing handheld. So that's a big advantage. So it's a nice little lens. The only reason I've got it quite low down the list is that I don't do very much macro. With my other lenses, I sort of have subjects I want to take photos of. When I put the macro lens on the camera, I find myself hunting around for subjects because I don't do much macro. But that's just me. If you're selling stuff online and you want to take photos of the products you're selling, then this could be a very, very useful little lens. Number 6 on the list is the EFM 55-200mm. And again, it's not a bad lens. The image quality is good and the image stabilization is exceptionally good. The problem with it is if I'm doing general travels or walk around photography, that focal length is actually too long. It's the 35mm equivalent because the EOS M has got a 1.6 crop factor. The 35mm equivalent is 88-320, and it's a bit too long for general photography. Quite often, I do want a 200mm lens. My lad plays football and I take quite a lot of photos of him playing football. But the problem then is that the lens isn't fast enough. At 200mm, it goes to f6.3 and I want quite a low ISO and I just can't get the speed. I want a shutter speed of at least 1/1000th of a second. So when I'm taking photos of him playing football, I use the adapter and I use either the 70-200 f4, and if I use this with my Viltrox speed booster, I get a reduced focal length, but I can actually shoot at f2.8, or I can use my EF 200mm f2.8. And again, if I use the speed booster, I can shoot at f2. So these two lenses enable me to get the fast shutter speed that I want at 200mm, and the EF M 55 to 200 just doesn't cut it on speed. The number 5 lens on my list is a lens that probably a lot of people would have thought would have been number 1. It's the EF M 32mm. It's the fastest EF M lens. It's the most expensive EF M lens. I think it was the last one produced. It's exceptionally sharp. So why haven't I rated it higher? And the reason is that I just don't find the focal length that useful. The equivalent on a 35mm is 51.2. And when I was shooting film cameras a long time ago, the first lens I got was a 50mm, and I just didn't find it that useful. I ended up buying a 28mm and a 70 to 200, and I found the wider angle and the zoom lenses much more useful than a 50mm. So I just don't find it that useful. But it is very, very sharp. I went out shooting one day with this lens and the EF 70 to 200 f4L. And when I was doing the post-processing, I went through a lot of photos taken with this lens, and I had to sharpen them all. They all needed sharpening. And then suddenly I got to a photo that just didn't need any sharpening. And if I did sharpen it, it looked over-sharpened. And then I suddenly realised that that's when I changed lens, and that photo was taken with the EF M 32mm. It's very, very sharp. Okay, so what about low light shooting? And yes, it is very useful in low light shooting, but there's actually another lens that's not quite as fast that I prefer for low light photography. So number 5 on my list, the EF M 32mm. Number 4 on my list is the EF M 18 to 55. This was one of the first EF M lenses that I had. And just for general photography, my two previous favourites were this one, the 18 to 55 and the 11 to 22. I like the 11 to 22 just for general photography. If I was going to be taking portraits, if I was out with my kids and wanted to take photos of them, I would prefer the 18 to 55 because the longer focal length is a bit more flattering for portraits. And at 55mm, that's a 35mm equivalent of 88. And traditionally, an 85mm focal length was seen as being a very good focal length for portraits. So yeah, so it's a really nice lens, and it's got the metal lens mount, which they changed later to a plastic lens mount to save money. It's still a really nice lens. The only reason it's at number 4 is because a lens that I bought later has overtaken it, and I'll get onto that in a minute. Number 3 is the EF M 22mm. And the reason I got into EOS M in the first place is because I got really fed up carrying around DSLR equipment. It was just too bulky and too heavy. I live in Thailand where it's hot and humid all the time, and I got really fed up carrying around a heavy backpack full of DSLR gear. And this lens really epitomizes the EOS M concept. You know, it's really small, really light. And when I go somewhere, I might use other lenses during the daytime. When I go out in the evening, this is my go-to lens. I love it because it's so small. If I go out in the evening, I don't want to take a lot of gear. It's fast. It's not as fast as the 32mm, that's 1.4. This is f2. So although it's not as fast, it's still fast. And I actually prefer the wider angle, the 22mm compared to the 32mm. And the image quality is great again. As I said earlier, you know, prime lenses tend to have better image quality than zoom lenses. So I just love this little pancake lens. Number 2 is the EFM 11-22. And of course, with a camera that has a crop sensor, the focal length on the lens isn't really as wide as it seems. You have to, you know, factor in that crop factor, multiply by 1.6. So the 35mm equivalent of this lens is 17.6 to 35.2. But that's a really useful zoom range for general walk around street photography. I've taken some nice shots with this. The only reservation is it's not very good for portraits. Wide angle lenses tend to have a bit of a strange perspective, and they're not very flattering for portraits. So if I'm taking photos of people, I prefer to use a longer lens. I do actually have the EFS 10-22. It's a bit wider at the wide end. It's a bit faster, and the image quality is actually a bit better. But I just prefer the small weight and size of the EFM lens. So number 2, the EFM 11-22. So that only leaves one lens. And if you're familiar with the range of EFM lenses, you'll know which one it is. And it's actually a lens that I only bought fairly recently. It was the last EFM lens that I did buy to complete the collection. And it's the EFM 18-150. And I really do like the 18-55, but there are times when I could do with a bit more focal length. And in those situations, I might take out the EFM 55-200 as well. But as I said before, that lens is a little bit long just for general photography. And since owning the 18-150, I've just found it an incredibly useful lens, just for general walk around photography. And when I decide which lens I'm going to take out with me, I've been deciding on this one most of the time. So I just find it a really, really useful lens. That's the Canon EFM 18-150. As I said right at the start, this is purely my own personal subjective opinion. So I don't expect everyone to agree with me. If you have an EOS M camera system and you're looking to buy more lenses, it might have been useful. If you have these lenses, you will have your own opinion, which I'll be very grateful to hear about. Just leave a comment below. And thank you for watching.